Hey everyone, this is FaZe and welcome to my channel. With me here today, I've got the iPad Pro with the M4 chip and the OLED display. Now I've been using this for about a week now, and to be honest, I really like it. But at the same time, I don't know if it's worth upgrading from the M2 iPad Pro or, to be honest, even the M1. But once again, I love this device, but I have conflicting thoughts on it at the same time. So without any further ado, let's get started with my review. All right, so let's first start by talking about the design. Now, when you first look at this iPad Pro, it doesn't look that different. If anything, it looks very familiar to the previous generation iPad Pros, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, after all, there's only so much you can do with this form factor. But what they have done is that they've made this new iPad Pro really thin, like really, really thin. This 13-inch measures up at just 5.1 millimeters, which makes it the thinnest Apple product ever, surpassing even the iPod Nano. Right when you hold this device, you can feel how thin it is. In fact, if you look at the USB-C connector at the very bottom, it's almost as thick as just the USB-C connector itself. So that's really thin. But more than the thinness, it's really light. Like when you hold this, you immediately can tell how light this is, and it's much more comfortable to hold with just one hand. And the thinness and the lightness does make a difference with a device of this size, especially when you pair it with the Magic Keyboard, because then it makes for a very thinner, lighter package overall. And I'm glad that they made it thinner and lighter. I was worried about the battery life, but to be honest, the battery life is pretty much the same. I would not have minded if they made it, thicker, or maybe just as thick as the previous generation iPad Pro if we got even better battery life. But once again, the battery life is pretty great, so I'm not complaining because it's nice to make something smaller, yet have great battery life. And like I said, it feels even better when it's on this Magic Keyboard, but we're going to talk about this Magic Keyboard in a little bit. But first, going back to the design, one thing that you will notice is the camera housing matches the color of the iPad itself. So for example, if you get a silver iPad, you have a silver aluminum matching camera housing. If you get the space black one, you get the space black color housing. Before, it was just black glass. And so that is one change that you will almost immediately notice after seeing how thin and light this is. But that's pretty much it. And then one other thing that I do want to mention is that they finally put the front-facing camera in the correct spot. It's in the middle of the long side of the iPad. And to be honest, I feel like with the iPad Pro, especially the 13-inch, it's very much a landscape-first device. So then finally putting the camera in the center is a big deal. And I don't know why they didn't do that before. Like, that's a given. There's two things that I do wish that they did. One thing that I really wish they did was, now that Apple is really embracing this as a landscape-first device, when you boot this iPad up, it gives you the Apple logo and landscape. The camera is now landscape. Even on the Magic Keyboard, if you look at it, the Apple logo, it's landscape. But when you look at the back of the iPad itself, this logo is not in landscape. It's in the portrait mode. It's in the longer side. So I really wish that they had made the Apple logo landscape, at least for the larger 13-inch iPad Pro. I think that would have looked really nice. But once again, that's just me nitpicking right now. And another thing that I kind of wish they did is, if you look at the new iPhone 15 Pro Max, if you look at the new MacBook Pros, they've all been very squared off devices, but they kind of slightly smoothened out the edges, so it's much more comfortable to hold. And with the iPad Pro, I kind of wish they did that. I kind of wish that they curved out the edges with this otherwise very squared off, edgier design. I wish they did that so that the design's look and feel was very cohesive with the iPhone, with the MacBook, and with the iPad. But once again, those are just two little things that they could have done. But that's pretty much it for the design. Now let's talk about the display, because the display and the chip are two of the biggest new updates that this iPad has received. So when you look at the display, rather than the mini LED backlit display of the older model, this now features a tandem OLED display known as the Ultra Retina XDR display. It's called a tandem OLED display as it now has two OLED displays placed over the top of one another. This allows the display to be much brighter while only barely consuming any power. So that's really nice. The iPad Pro delivers 1000 nits of full screen brightness in all situations and 1600 nits of peak HDR brightness. All of the traditional upsides of OLED are immediately apparent. Since OLEDs control each pixel individually, you get much richer blacks, so the letter boxes above and below a video just disappear into the bezel. and photos look much more dynamic as well. The colors are much more vibrant. Now, I will say that when you first look at the iPad Pro and when you turn it on, you're kind of like, okay, this is a nice display, but maybe it's a little too overhyped. But once you start using it and then you go back to the previous generation iPad Pros, that's where you start really noticing the difference. Now, on the 1 terabyte and 2 terabyte models, there's also an option for a nano textured glass. This is designed to massively reduce glare, and it gives it sort of like a matte-like appearance. Once again, it's only for the 1 terabyte and 2 terabyte options, and even then you have to pay $100 more if you want to go for this nano textured glass. Now, personally, I feel like it's great for those who use it outdoors, and it's also great for color-sensitive editing. It does make a big difference for such users. I think for the average consumer, the standard glass display is much, much nicer. And I feel like it won't look as grainy because I do feel that you lose a little bit of the clarity on the nano texture display. And that's just me checking out the nano texture display just briefly at the Apple Store. The standard one looks much, much nicer. Now let's talk about the M4 chip. Now this is the first time ever that Apple is bringing their flagship chip to an iPad first and not a Mac. Usually it's the other way around. The Mac gets the flagship chip, then it trickles down to the iPad, but here it's reversed. The M4 chip Apple is saying is 50% faster than the previous M2 running model. And to be very honest with you, you're not going to find a difference. Like, yes, this device is powerful, but so was the M2 iPad Pro. So was the M1 iPad Pro. There were some applications that I was kind of comparing with this one and the M1, and I couldn't really find a difference. If you're someone who's primarily using the iPad Pro for casually, surfing the web, browsing through social media, checking and sending emails, watching movies, watching TV shows, playing some games here and there, you're not really going to find a big difference. Now, I do a lot of video editing on my iPad Pro, and that is where I found a difference. This renders videos really, really fast. So I feel like for those heavy graphic designers and video editors, I think you're going to really appreciate the M4 chip. But once again, if you have an M2 iPad Pro, you're good. You do not need to upgrade. I do not think you need to upgrade because performance has never been an issue with the iPad Pro. Apple keeps making these devices faster and much more efficient, but at the same time, the other iPads are no slouch. They're also just as fast. And once again, I don't think the average consumer is really going to find a difference. However, I will say that the M4's main practical purpose is to power the new beautiful OLED display. The chip does an incredible job providing such rich colors and brightness while not using so much power. So that's why you also get the great battery life that we all have to learn to love from the iPad Pro. All right, so we've talked about the design. We've talked about the display. We talked about the M4 chip. I think those are three of the most important things to talk about when it comes to the new iPad Pro. However, I'm kind of conflicted because you use this or you use any previous iPad Pro, you're not going to find a major difference. And that's the thing, I'm appreciating that Apple is putting so much power into this. This is a crazy good device, a great computer for most people. But at the same time, there are minor things with iPadOS that makes it not as worth it. For example, Files is a great app, but it's not like Finder on a Mac. And I don't want it to be like a Mac, but I feel like it takes me additional steps to do some things sometimes on this device that I feel like on a Mac I could do right away. The performance is great. The display is great. The design is wonderful. Everything about this is fantastic. But I feel like iPadOS, as fantastic as it is, it needs to take advantage of the M4 chip. Now, having said that, WWDC is right around the corner. And I feel like with iPadOS 18, that's where we're going to really feel, that this device is worth it. Because there are a lot of rumors out there that iPadOS 18 is going to get a ton of new AI features. It's going to get a lot of great new functionality. And I think that this device is made for iPadOS 18. And right now, it's released with iPadOS 17. And I think we're really going to see the beautiful magic of this device when the new OS upgrade comes out. But once again, my biggest thing with the new iPad Pro is that it's a great device, but it's not necessarily one that you need to upgrade to if you have an M2 or even an M1. This is great, but it's not something you necessarily need to buy. And now, another thing I want to talk about with this iPad Pro is the new Magic Keyboard. This new Magic Keyboard, I feel like, is the reason that I felt like I need to upgrade to this new iPad Pro. Display, great, but it's not so great that I need to upgrade for, because the previous generation mini LED display was already so wonderful. The chip I could barely care about, because for the tasks that I'm using this for, the chip is, the M2 chip was very fast. And then the design, once again, it's pretty similar. Yes, it's thinner and lighter. It's not groundbreaking by any means. Now, when it comes to the Magic Keyboard, that's where you get the magic. This new Magic Keyboard feels thinner and lighter than the previous Magic Keyboard, which is nice because it doesn't feel as hefty when you take it out, especially since the iPad itself has also become thinner and lighter. You get the same rubber material, which, to be honest, I'm not really a fan of. I wish they'd used something a little more premium and durable, especially for the price that you're paying. Now, from the outside, one difference is that you get an all-new hinge that is no longer covered by the rubber material like previous models. It's pretty flat and flush with the keyboard, and the USB-C port has also changed its orientation. However, the magic is when you open it up. You get this all nice aluminum surface for your palm rest and keyboard enclosure. This makes the keyboard feel a lot more premium, and with the all-new function row keys and larger trackpad with haptic feedback, it feels a lot more like a MacBook. This new Magic Keyboard is what truly enhances the user experience of the iPad Pro, and I absolutely love it. Alright, so now let's talk about the Apple Pencil. The new Apple Pencil Pro looks pretty much like the Apple Pencil 2, but now you can squeeze the pencil to bring up a menu now to access quick controls to different pens and markers. There is also haptic feedback, and you can now roll the pencil to change brush shapes. And finally, the pencil supports Find My as well. Alright guys, so this basically wraps up my review on the all-new 2024 iPad Pro. And this was the 13-inch model with the M4 chip. And like I said over and over in my review, this is a fantastic machine. It's a fantastic iPad. It's a great computer for most people. Having said that though, I don't think you need to upgrade to this iPad if you have an M2 iPad. M1 iPad, maybe. Go to the Apple Store, check it out, check and see if you feel the difference between your M1 and this M4. But if you have an M2, I don't think you need to go rush out and buy this. Yes, it's a great device, but if you like the Magic Keyboard and that's something you use all the time, then maybe this Magic Keyboard might be a reason for you to upgrade. Now, I am going to challenge myself. I am going to stop using my 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M3 chip and go all in on the iPad. I'm going to do this for 1 week and see if this can become my MacBook replacement. And to be honest, I think it can. For a lot of the tasks that I do on my MacBook, I feel like I can fully do that on the iPad Pro and actually enjoy it more because it is a very versatile device. So if you want to see that video where I go over how this is replacing my MacBook, then stay tuned for that. But at the end of the day, I want to know your thoughts and your questions. So leave them down in the comment section below. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. If you are conflicted with which color to get or which keyboard color to even get, I've done a full color comparison video, which you can click in the link above or in the description below. I compared the space black with the silver and the white keyboard with the black keyboard. So check that video out. I also did a video where I go over all the key accessories with this device, so you can watch that video as well. Once again, subscribe to my channel. Stay tuned for all my future iPad Pro and all Apple videos in general, and I'll see you next time.